Hello, children. We've been looking into this very important aspect of the lifelines of Indian economy, and it is not just that these things are lifelines of India, but what we have been looking into are lifelines of any country, any economy on the planet, whether a rich economy and an industrialized economy like United States of America or Russia or Canada or China for that matter. Not just that, it is extremely important for even the developing countries like, say, Sri Lanka or Kenya or Ethiopia, Uganda, or any country within the African subcontinent. Now, we've been looking into today. We saw the topic of railways, and we all know it doesn't need to be. We do not need to elaborate it any further. We all understand the enormous amount of role that railways plays in the transportation, whether in India or in any part of the world. You know, in India, of course, the maximum amount of people travel through Indian railways, but you have to understand, maybe it's not so railways being used for carrying people from different parts of the country that much to an extent, say, for example, in United States of America or Russia for that matter, but railways still play enormous amount of role when it comes to carrying freight in these countries, and a huge amount of the uh, the transportation of goods from one part of the country to the other in these countries happen through the railways. So, the Indian Railways is now reorganized into 16 zones. Stints like its northern, southern, southeastern, southwestern, northeastern, those kinds of, so that it actually makes the management and administration of railways simpler. When you have divided them into different zones, it becomes easier for the department to manage it, rather than having just one zone, whereby it would become enormously challenging in a country like India, not just because of our size, but also because of the huge population of people who actually use railways every day, whether for traveling, from one city to another, or within the city through local trains as well. The distribution pattern of the railway network in the country has been largely influenced by physiographic, economic, and administrative factors. The northern plains, with their vast level land, high population density, and rich agricultural resources, provided the most favorable condition for their growth. However, a large number of rivers requiring construction of bridges across their wide beds posed some obstacles. In the hilly terrains of the peninsular region, railway tracks are laid through low hills, gaps, or tunnels. The Himalayan mountain, in fact, students, if any of you have actually taken the Konkan Railway, which traverses the whole of Maharashtra and Kerala, that is the western borders of India, it's enormously challenging engineering wise, but it gives you breathtaking beauty of the scenery. If you ever get a chance, then you would understand how challenging it must have been to construct railway lines in those geographies. So this is what it is talking about. Likewise, it was difficult to lay railway lines in the sandy plains of western Rajasthan, swamps of Gujarat, forested tracts of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Orissa, and Jharkhand. Naturally, you have different challenges in different areas. In certain areas, you have a challenge of the terrain, that is a hilly terrain, where it would be mostly rocks that you have to actually manage to lay the railway lines. uh, there could be certain areas which are very unstable areas, because they are in the seismic zones, and then there would be certain areas which would all be jungles, like the areas which they are talking about, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Orissa, and Jharkhand. And they have failed to mention one another state where railway goes, that is, and it is really all jungles, that is Assam. The contiguous stretch of Shayadri could be crossed only through gaps or passes, ghats, parts. In recent times, the development of Konkan Railway along the west coast has facilitated the movement of passengers and goods in this most important economic region of India. It has also faced a number of problems such as the sinking of track in certain stretches and landslides, naturally, students, because those are the areas which run through the sea coast, that is the coastlines, and you can understand that the water in those areas is very salty, and it tends to corrode the railway tracks. You have to have you have to be very careful about these areas, because in the other areas, that is in central India or in other parts of India, where you have a normal weather thing, where where the water is not salty, uh, the corrosion happens much later. But in the areas where it is very close to the sea, the corrosion naturally happens faster. Today, the railways have become more important in our national economy than all other means of transport put together. However, rail transport suffers from certain problems as well. Many passengers travel without tickets. Thefts damaging railway property has not yet stopped completely. Guys, this is nothing to do with railways. This is to do with what we Indians are made of, actually. This is our nature. Railways can't do anything about it. You know, that we'll have to change our behavior. What can railways do about it? Pipelines. Pipeline transport network is a new arrival on the transportation map of India. In the past, these were used to transport water to cities and industries. In the past, that is, students, it doesn't mean just 50 years ago or 100 years ago. You know, these pipelines have been used in different parts of the world for a very, very long period of time. Okay. Now, solids can also be transported through pipeline when converted into slurry. Now, pay attention here. I'll repeat. Solids can also be transported through a pipeline when converted into slurry. The far inland locations of refineries like Barauni, which is in Bihar, Mathura, which is in Uttar Pradesh, which is very close to Agra. Panipat, we all know, is in Haryana, and gas-based fertilizer plants could be thought of only because of the pipelines. Initial cost of laying pipelines is very high, but subsequent running costs are minimal. It rules out transshipment losses or delays because you have pipelines and everything goes through it. The only challenge is in the initial years when you are laying the pipeline. Otherwise, once the pipelines have been laid properly, then yes, the movement just happens, very, very smoothly. Unlike sending these things through the train or through road, where it is always open to different kinds of challenges. There are three important networks of pipeline transportation within the country. Yes, from oil fields in Upper Assam to Kanpur, that is Uttar Pradesh, via Guwahati, Barauni, and Allahabad. It is branches from Barauni, that is again, as I mentioned, Bihar, to Haldia, that is West Bengal, via Rajband to Maurigram, and Guwahati to Siliguri. Siliguri again would be West Bengal. It's in fact from Siliguri, which happens to be the connecting point for Darjeeling as well. From Salaya in Gujarat to Jalandhar in Punjab via Viramangam and Mathura we all know Delhi, and Sonipat, which is Haryana. It has branches to connect Koyali near Vadodara, Gujarat, Chakshu, and other places. Gas pipeline from Hazira in Gujarat. Students, this is Hazira is it's very close to Surat. First, you have to go to Surat, and from Surat it is further about 45 minutes, and then you reach Hazira. And it happens to be, in fact, Hazira happens to be not just important in terms of the pipelines which go to Hazira. Hazira has some, you name it, and they have it. They have the ArcelorMittal steel factory, then they have Larsen and Toubro, then they have NTPC. Hazira also has Indian Fertilizer Corporation. Hazira also has Shell Petrochemicals. You just name it. It's a very, and of course it has Reliance Petrochemical as well. So it is very industrially advanced area. Now waterways, since the ancient period, India was one of the seafaring countries. Its seamen sailed far and near, thus carrying and spreading Indian commerce and culture. Waterways are the cheapest means of transport. They are most suitable for carrying heavy and bulky goods. It's a fuel efficient and environmental friendly mode of transport. India has inland navigation waterways of 14,500 kilometers in length. Uh, Out of these, only 5,685 kilometers are navigable by merchandise mechanized vessels. The following waterways have been declared as the national waterways by the government. Students, you have to understand one very important thing. You know, if you watch television right now, it would be half of the country would be immersed in water. Okay, there would be flood all around. And the news readers would keep telling you that this river is overflowing, that river is overflowing. Okay, but we still. If you ask anyone, and if you look at the length and breadth of river which runs through, which crisscrosses India, then the waterways have been extremely underutilized. Okay, we still do not know how to utilize them properly because of one very important reason. Firstly, the important reason is that our rivers mostly, they have enormous amount of water in them during the monsoon rains. Otherwise, for most of the year, they don't have much water in them because of India's excessive population, because of which, we use enormous amount of water, okay, for our own consumption. And the water, you look around, all around. You look all around India. You look even in Dehradun. I remember very close to the canal road. There used to be, a kind of a river, if I may choose to call it. But I don't see any river there because now hundreds of homes have been constructed there. So on paper, you still have a lot of rivers, but then they don't carry sufficient water that you can actually have boats and medium-sized boats and large boats, and even, and definitely not to mention the ferries and ships. Yeah, so most of our waterways, they have enormous amount of the rivers have enormous amount of water in them. They are flooding all the time, but it usually happens during the monsoon months. Otherwise, the rest of the year, it is not as easy. Okay, and because of this unpredictability, it is very difficult to make these things commercially viable. And that is why the trains are considered to be more reliable, the roads are considered to be more reliable than the waterways. Though ever since I was young, I've been hearing about that waterways carry enormous potential in a country like India, but we are yet to do anything about it. Thank you.